Hey folks, I'm Scott from IT Rockstars. Before we get into the interview, just giving you a little bit of a background. I met Timm at an event. It was an MSP event called Datto back in 2019. It was being held in Paris, and I really it was interesting the way that we met because we kind of just for some reason we went to dinner, him and his partner, myself, and we were introduced between a mutual friend that we had, and we thought, oh, let's have a meal. So it was really kind of off the cuff in the way that we met, and I've kind of kept touch with Chris ever since, and we touch base now and again. We meet up in peer groups and things like that. But I realize that obviously Autotask or a PSA system is something that you might be looking for in your business. You might already have one, or you're maybe just choosing one at the moment, or you're moving from one to another. And I thought, let's get Chris on the show. Let's speak to him about Autotask in particular, but also just in generally on PSAs and what they can actually do for your managed service business. So if you're running an IT, IT support business, why you actually need a PSA system. Now, personally, when I was running my MSP, the first thing that I did, I went out and got a help desk system. I went and got an RMM tool. I didn't realize that I needed a PSA system. And kind of what we kind of discuss in this interview is actually the reasons why you needed a PSA system and how it can actually change the way that you operate your business. So when you start to scale, that you're doing it in the right way. And if you are already at a certain scale as an MSP, how to do it more effectively to get maximum profit out of your clients. So we're going to speak to Chris here. Just a quick shout out, if you are interested in scaling your business, IT Rockstars is here to help you. You can find our services itrockstars.net. At the very bottom of itrockstars.net, we run a live class every Thursday where we take questions and answers and we actually show you how you can scale your MSP. So you can check that out. Anyway, over to the video. And I do apologize, I actually forgot to turn on the mic for the video, but I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Bye.
So cool. So what are we doing today? We're gonna
Yeah, I'm going to ask you really dumb questions that you can attempt to answer about. I said I don't even know the name of it. We're going to call it, is it Datto or is it PSA tool?
PSA tool, I guess. Yeah, it's more. Yeah.
Does that
It's
mean what's the market name now for the product? Because it's been purchased over by Datto and it used to be Autotask. Is it still called Autotask?
It is, yeah. So the company used to be Autotask, and then the they were taken over by Datto, and they've still called the product Autotask. Although I think it's officially going to be changed at some point to Datto PSA.
That's okay. I'll have to remember that when I title the video.
But it is. Although I don't think it's officially called that yet, so it might be. People still know it as Autotask, and it's still. I think Datto still refers to it as Autotask, but I do think they in some things I've seen they're calling it Datto PSA. So probably eventually over time we'll get to the point where it becomes, Datto PSA.
How did you get started with them anyway? I think I'm not sure if I asked you that or not. Like, how did you become a consultant in the whole PSA space? I know you had your own MSP, but
so it's a long history. Basically, I ran an MSP business, as you know, and I then sold that business back in around 2012. And when I sold the business, I kind of didn't have any plans to do anything, and it was just around about the time that Autotask, when they were just Autotask back then, we're looking to start up in the UK, and the MD at the time basically. He was trying to sell me Autotask, and I said to him, it's no point in me buying it because I'm selling up. And he said, well, when you sell up, what are you going to do with yourself? And I said, well, I'm going to nothing much really. And he said, well, why don't you come work for us? And we need somebody to kind of head up our pre-sales technical team and kind of build out our entire technical infrastructure in the UK. So I took up the challenge, went to work for Autotask. And then I was with them for about 5.5 years. And then I left Autotask, and just before they sort of became Datto. And then I actually accidentally started as an independent consultant, because the plan was never really to go and do this. It was just somebody called me up that was a client from before and said, oh, you used to work at Autotask. What are you doing now? Can you come and help us? Blah, blah, blah. And I then ended up, saying, well, maybe there's a bit of a business in this. And I went to start it out on my own. So that's really how it happened. And here we are 3.5 years later, and I'm a fully fledged Autotask consultant. So
yeah, and I think we kind of came to the conclusion last time that we spoke. You're probably one of the best placed people to talk about Autotask, because you don't work for them anymore, so you're not really selling the product as such. So we've got a bit of an unbiased overview of the product, and that's kind of what we're going to kind of cover, I think, isn't it? So obviously you've got the book PSA Profitability. It was extremely it was a very digestible book. I read it like in a night, pretty much. Was so it's one of these quick reads. But one of the things that kind of really stood out to me, and it's probably, we're recording this video now, we're obviously going to give an overview of the PSA Autotask. And a lot of people that are watching this video are probably like, do I even need a PSA? Why do I need a PSA? And if you're just a one-man band MSP, and you say in the book that there's many people that tell you this, that they don't actually need a PSA, but you want to explain why you maybe need a PSA in the first place, even if you're that size in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, so as a small one-man band MSP, you need an MSP, a PSA tool, because that's going to help you with doing obviously your billing. It's going to help you to be more efficient, more effective as a customer. It's going to allow you to see the overall profitability of your customers, and that kind of thing. Whereas you wouldn't get that out of a normal, ordinary ticketing system, right? So it allows you to run your entire business from, as I call it, from kind of cradle to grave. So getting to a point where you're going through, right when they're still a prospect or a lead, you're tracking all of that through the CRM, creating the opportunity, all that kind of thing, all the way to when they become a customer and you need to bill that customer for the work. So you're tracking all of that activity on the customer through your PSA tool. So and you need to be able to know, especially as a smaller company, you need to be able to know when you're profitable on those customers, right? Which of those customers are costing you money, which are making you the most money, which are the most profitable, all those kinds of things. And if you don't have a PSA tool, you're not going to be able to find that information easily. And
you've got a story in the book about how you actually, you came to this point where you needed a PSA. I think from memory, I recall that you had basically all the time logged in help desk tickets, and then you had to bill the time at the end of the week or the end of the month, and that was a bit of a challenge for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think, and this will probably resonate with a lot of people out there, is, when I went on site, especially as a one-man band, I would either take a book with me, or even worse, a sheet of paper, and I would write down when I got to the customer site, and I'd write down when I left. And sometimes I would just make it up and go, you know what, I was there for 3 hours or 4 hours. I'd get back to the office, and I would try and put that into some kind of into Notepad or something of that sort of ilk at the time. And I would look at my fives and say, well, is this a 3 or a 5? Like, how long did I spend on site? I can't even read my own handwriting. And, I had a fairly good idea at the end of each day, but sometimes I would leave that for a week, right? And I'd get back to site. And then on Fridays, I would try and figure out what I did on Monday, and I couldn't even remember what I had for breakfast that day, let alone what I did on Monday at a client site. And even though it was written down, it was all over the place. And so I got to the weekend, and I would sit there all weekend scratching my head, like, what did I do? Did I even write this down? How long did I spend on this site? And then you'd end up making a lot of it up. So, you might have been with a client for 5 hours, but you go, oh, actually, do you know what? I'll just charge them 3, whatever, and it's good to go. Until I got a PSA tool, and then I started putting everything accurately into a PSA tool and started to record everything properly. So I got to a point where I then said, when I go on site, I fired up my laptop. I had Autotask open in front of me, started recording what time I got there, what time I ended. It accurately recorded the time, and I kept all of the notes in the system, and I made it a real big thing to say, I'm paying for this tool, so I really need to start to use this tool properly and record and capture my notes and my time correctly. And by doing that, it made me really start to see which customers were costing me money, which customers were my most profitable, my least profitable, and ultimately allowed me to sell my business, because I could then prove, I could have a, you know, on a report, pull a report and go, here's what it looks like. This is who all of these customers are. These are the profitable customers. These are the non-profitable customers. You know, and present something to somebody when they want to buy the company. And I honestly believe if I had not had a PSA tool in place, I probably wouldn't have firstly grown the business, but also wouldn't have been able to sell the business either.
Were you in that mindset though back then that you needed a PSA to be able to document this so that it was, you know, were you thinking that sort of longer term where you were planning to sell the business at one point in the future? Or was it really just to find out what clients you were wasting your time with?
Yeah, so a bit of both, really. And I actually remember a story. One of the two big PSA tools, I won't mention who they are, but you know, I saw an article about them, and I phoned them up and said, you know, I'm a one-man band, I want to use a PSA tool, and they went, yeah, no, we don't sell to one-man bands. You know, you guys don't have any of the pains that big companies have. And I'm like, but actually I do, because I also don't know who my profitable customers are, right? I also don't know, like, I'm not efficient, I'm not effective, I have no way to track all of this. So, you know, I'm just as ineffective as a small business as a larger business, and I have just the same pain points as they do. So, you know, and eventually I convinced them to sell me, well, I had to in those days buy a 3-user license, but I ended up buying the product. And because of that, I ended up spending, I got to a point where I was like, okay, now I'm spending, in those days, it was like $300 or $400 a month on this product. And I have to make sure that I'm using it and getting the best out of it. So
yeah, it's paid off now. Yeah, I remember, I remember when I first started my MSP at the time, and then we pivoted from an MSP. We never actually sold the MSP. We just didn't want to go down the route of being an MSP. We changed our business to marketing for MSPs. But I remember speaking to Autotask at the time. Now, this was back in 2016. And in my head, you know, I didn't realize after reading your book what a PSA can do for your business. In my head was like, okay, I need to get a help desk system, and I need an RMM tool. I'll go and speak to Autotask, but I didn't realize everything else that comes kind of under that as well from a PSA perspective. So I'm guessing that there's probably, you know, the more established MSPs or IT businesses, there's probably some that are maybe not using something like Autotask. They're maybe just using a help desk and an RMM, but they're just not tracking all of this other stuff to see what their profitability is. Do you ever come into situations like that where, you know, there's someone that's maybe not using Autotask or one of the competitor, you know, products on the market?
Absolutely. You'll be surprised at how many big-ish or bigger MSPs I've seen that aren't using any kind of PSA tool at all. So they've either got some kind of homegrown system, or they've got a you know, a true service desk application like you were mentioning. And part of the reason that, you know, a lot of people actually make that mistake, right, is they go, well, I need a tool to do service delivery. So they go, well, I need some way of communicating with my customers, having them log tickets.
Yeah.
So they buy a PSA tool thinking it's a service desk, and it really isn't. There's a lot more to it than that. So you know, so those people who are buying the PSA and aren't using it properly are, you know, they most of the time it's because they're picking it for the wrong reason. But those customers you were just talking about, that, or those MSPs that are you know, using a service desk, again, it's probably because they don't realize what a PSA can do,
Yeah.
or, you know, or they have other ways of tracking that information. But the problem is, what they're doing is they're probably tracking it in multiple tools. And so, you know, you've got all these disparate systems all over the place, and you've got to learn all of these systems, and you've got to get all these systems to talk to each other. You know, whereas if you just put all of that together in one tool, in a PSA tool, you're going to be able to find all of that in one place.
Okay. And for the bigger, the more established businesses that aren't really using the PSA and how it should. I mean, what I'm reading here is you can calculate things like the burden of, I've got here the true costs if you've got an engineer and the burden costs plus the overheads of the engineer, and then apply that to find out what your real profitability is in the business. One of the questions I had around that specific piece, like, the salary cost of the engineer plus any tax and then things like training, and this burden cost piece is, do you work in other things like, office rent, utilities? Do you go to that extreme? How much coffee and toilet paper you're going through every month? Does it go down to that sort of very granular level, or do you keep it at a sort of higher level?
Yeah, it's a much higher level. So actually, that's a great question, and I think I see this all the time, right? There's and I did a webinar the other day on the Tech Tribe, and it was all about exactly that, right? Is that there's kind of 4 ways of working out your burden, right? I call them the good, the other good, the bad, and the ugly. And so the best way to do it is to kind of take all of those costs in your business. So like you said, look at what the engineer's hourly rate is. Then put on top of that, you got national insurance or social security, or you've got if you're in the US, you got like federal unemployment tax, you got state unemployment, all those sorts of employer costs. So you add all of those together, and that gives you the true burden of what the engineer is, of what that engineer costs you, and that gives you an hourly rate. And the other good way to do it, and the way that a lot of people do that, is you simply take the hourly rate of the engineer and you times it by a percentage. So normally around about 30%. And that will take into account all of those employer costs that you have, and that becomes your burden rate. I wouldn't go down to the nth degree. I've seen people do that where they literally work out, like you say, how much toilet paper they use, and the guy's using a desk that he's sharing with somebody else, so he's using like 1/1000th of that desk, and therefore the wear and tear on that. I'm like, dude, life is far too short to work that stuff out, and you really don't need to go down. Excuse me, you really don't need to go down to that granular level. What you need to do is just kind of go, this is what my engineer costs me, times that by a percentage, which is usually around about 30%, and that gives you a burden rate, and that's what you enter in as the engineer's cost.
Okay, so applied some common sense to it. The only reason I asked that, so the experience that I had, was an old colleague that I used to work with, and he used to run a chain of retail stores, and he knew those type of, he was like an Excel guru. He just knew so much about Excel. He tracked everything in there. He tracked his whole life in Excel, but he went down to that level of costs in the business. That's why I ask it more than anything else.
I mean, you can, and there's an argument that that is obviously much more accurate, but the problem is, and to just you mentioned earlier about the toilet paper. I mean, if this month the engineer might use like half a roll, next month he might use 3 rolls, right? You're going to be spending the rest of your life trying to figure out how much toilet paper was used this month, or how much ink he used in his pen this month versus last month. I'm like, who's got time for that? Right? So and that's why you need to get to a point where you say round about 30%. If you take into account that you're probably paying around about 30% extra over and above his hourly rate or his yearly salary, however you want to work it out, you're roughly paying around about 30% for all of that stuff to have that engineer work for you.
That's the type of things I've heard kicked around before, that sort of percentage number on top. And it's certainly selling managed IT services, going to a business owner and speaking to them about their internal IT costs. It's like, well, you could save that 20 or 30% on that internal cost by going to custom managed services and outsourcing your IT. So that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard in other places as well. So Chris, are we going to get into this and you're actually going to show me the product? I mean, this is why we're all here. We love seeing tools and shiny objects. And we did discuss last time we met that you had a demo that you could fire up for us, and as I say, I could probably ask you some really dumb questions.
So what we can do in here is to see, this is Autotask, right? So I'm going to go through and just show you some of the stuff, certainly that that you're going to be able to get out of
I've got a really quick question before we start. Is it web-based? Is there an actual client for Windows, or is it web-based?
It's fully web-based.
Has it always been that way?
It has, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So Autotask has always been that way. So Connectwise does have a, as they call it, a fat client. So you know, they have a client that you can install as a Windows-based application. But yeah, Autotask has always been a web-based application.
Okay, I see lots of tabs.
Yeah, so these tabs here are typically going to be, you're not going to use all of these in your business. These are tabs that I use predominantly to show people the kinds of things that you can do.
Okay.
Now, just from a financial point of view, if we click in financials, this is one of the tabs that makes Autotask really kind of, you know, everything we've talked about, really brings it into its own right, and makes a PSA tool. The reason why you should use one is the fact that you know, this is showing you how much money we've made this month. This is only a demo account, by the way. These aren't my real figures, just in case you were wondering. I wish those were my real figures every month. But this is kind of showing, you know, how much money we've billed last month versus this month, so we can compare month on month. We can also straight away see who our top revenue customers are. So, you know, in this particular example, we can see that, you know, for this month, we've made £52,000 out of Biffa. Okay. And then we can also see who the most profitable customers are. And this is where these two widgets together, if I actually just try and bring these together, these are two that I really think are, it's going to do that for me. Anyway, these two here are really kind of showing you, you know, here's our top revenue customer. And you can see that here, Biffa is actually our second most profitable. So just because they're our top revenue earner doesn't mean that they're actually our most profitable customer. Okay. And these are the kinds of things you can do by very, very quickly entering in, you know, making sure that you've obviously got all the right costs in there, making sure you've got all of the right services and products and all of those kind of things in there, is going to be able to very quickly give you this kind of information. So go on.
In this example here, we're looking at the other two, the sort of top three here. You've got integrated providers and sort of an AdWick engineering, which are of similar levels. Biffa, in this case, I'm assuming this is something that you see where is a client of yours that thinks that their client, you know, has got the most revenue, but it's actually not that profitable. What would the steps be then to make them more, well, you know, what's the action that most people take on this type of data? Do they just put them down lower on the priority scale, or is it a case that they really need to look at the account?
Well, the first thing I would do is, in this case, I'd look at it and say, okay, well, you know, here's the one about profitable. So why is Biffa not, you know, not my top most profitable customer? Because they're my top revenue earner. So I would kind of click into here and I'd start to say, okay, well, let's drill into this in much more detail and figure this out, right? And go, well, you know, and here's a perfect example, right? And so, by the way, this is, of course, deliberately done this way, but here you can now see that, you know, we have here where we've got these services that we're selling to a customer on a monthly basis, but we're making revenue of £1,600 and we've got a cost of £2,000. So obviously it's costing us £430, which is bringing down our overall profitability on this. Now, the reason I say this is done deliberately is I see that a lot of people actually do this, where they'll have the cost of those services, but over time, those services, you know, they might buy them in at a slightly higher price this month, or, you know, whatever the case might be, and or even a lower price, and they never actually readjust the price. So what they do is they go to the customer and say, well, I'll give you a bit of a discount on what I'm selling it to you on, but they never ever adjust the cost price. So you end up with this kind of thing. So actually, this customer probably isn't actually as unprofitable as we think they are, but we can drill in to find out why, right? And this is the reason why here. The same thing over here. You know, we can see that on this one, we can see we're making £41,000 worth of revenue on this service, and you know, we've got a cost of 22,000. So this is fine and giving us a good revenue figure. But you know, do we even know that this is actually 41,000, right? I mean, you know, for this particular month, has this figure changed? Has this cost changed? Do we need to adjust anything in here? This is giving us the ability to really have a very quick look in here on what needs to change, if anything. Now, if you were then to look at some of these other things, for example, now these are all services that it's showing in here, but if we were seeing labor, this would be giving us a cost of what that labor would be costing us, right? So, and this is a really good example to see, you know, if you're seeing labor with a zero cost against it, then you know that you don't have a burden rate for that engineer, or you know, engineers have done some work against that, but there's zero cost of that labor. So it really gives you the ability to see that very quickly. And then in this particular instance here again is, you know, we've got this photocopy 500 copies per month, but look here, we've got a zero cost. So basically what we're saying is, you know, we're probably buying in this service from somewhere. We're going to have to pay somebody, but we're saying it's a zero cost. So we're showing it's 100% profitable. So there's a reason why this company isn't profitable, and this gives us the ability to very quickly pinpoint in there. But the ones that I really wanted to point out were these ones, because this is showing, you know, on this side, look at this and say, well, okay, so they're my second most profitable. That's fine. They still are a profitable customer overall. I mean, you know, overall Biffa is a relatively profitable customer for me, so I'm not too bothered. But these ones here, I'm going to look at this one and go, hey, Top Dog's costing me, you know, £430 every month just to have them as a client. You know, what is the reason for that? And again, I can see in here the reason for it is that the, you know, the costs of our services and the revenue is much more. But you know, there might be another reason why this is like that. Maybe this is a labor rate or something like that that's costing us money.
Do you find when you go in and you start, you know, pulling this data out for your clients and showing them where there's, you know, where there's those negative figures that you're on the bottom left, is there any pattern that you usually see where maybe clients are actually costing one of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I see this all the time, and the pattern most of the time is that, you know, engineers are working against that customer contract, but those engineers have got the wrong cost in them, or you know, or no cost at all. So there's no burden rate being entered in there, and then therefore the cost of the labor is showing as zero. But obviously, it's not going to be zero, because there's the engineers obviously are costing that business money. So I see that a lot, and I also see this kind of thing a lot, where the cost is much higher than the revenue on most of the customers that are non-profitable. And sometimes, you know, it's a case of, well, yes, that is true, that is the cost, and we've been giving a discount on this, but we've been spending all of this money on these services. So at that point, I'd be then saying to them, well, you know, if you shouldn't be giving a discount to your customer if you're spending all of this money on these services, because if it's costing you more to buy those services in to deliver to your customers, then like, well, what's the point then?
So something has to change, otherwise you increase your, you know, you change your contract for the amount of resources that contract's taken from you.
Exactly.
Or you end the contract.
Yeah.
Sell a contract to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things I just wanted to show you here in terms of so not only do we have the ability to see you know, that information in Biffa, but if I go or on those widgets, but if I look at the financials, this is another report that I really love, and I'm just going to wait for this to load up. This is kind of giving us an overall view of all of the contracts. So we're looking at profitability by contract. Now, looking at this, we can see, you know, overall, this is that same company we looked at earlier on, Biffa Waste Services. So in here, we can break down every single contract that we have on this customer. And we can then straight away see what the revenue is, what these costs are. So in other words, what is this contract costing us, including the labor costs? And then, you know, write down in the bottom line an overall profitability of this customer. So I would look at this and say, you know, okay, so here we might not be profitable, or here we may not have a huge profitability against this contract, but overall, this customer is actually pretty profitable for me. You know, 50% profitability is actually pretty okay. But I still want to go through and make sure I'm I'm understanding what's happening on here. Yeah, here's an example, right? There's no way that this customer should ever be running at 100% profitability on a contract. And the reason for that being is there's zero costs in there. So if I go and have a look at this contract, I bet you we're going to find in here that there will probably be some kind of, yeah. And okay, so the reason being is we actually haven't built anything for this, but you know, there's no labor costs on here. So if we went and put some time against this, we would probably see that this wouldn't be 100% profitable anymore. But these are the things you want to be looking out for, right? Is you want to be looking out for customers that are massively highly profitable. So if a customer's like 98% profitable, chances are they probably not, because you know, you're probably going to be expecting them to run it around about a 40 or 50% profitability. If you're seeing that thing showing a 98% profitability, or a you know, even 84% is fairly you know, high profitability on this customer. So these are red flags, right? These are things I'm going to be saying, okay, now I need to drill further into this and figure out what is the reason why these things are showing the wrong figures, or, you know, showing as not profitable and that kind of stuff.
When you set this up for, like, say, someone's not using this, you know, a system like this, they're not putting in the costs, and they're not tracking this to get this type of information here. How long do you think you should leave it before you actually get a true picture of the business and things like this profitability report that you're pulling? How long do you suggest?
Probably a good couple of months at least. Probably 3 months is a good one to start to see profitability. You know, 1 month is too short because things are going to change during that month, and you might see that you may have a slightly unprofitable month, but you know, the next month it might be a bit more of a profitable month. So normally I say around about 3 months is a good time to you know, to get a really clear picture of what's going on that customer.
Okay. Does the profitability percentage, is that all over the place for MSPs, or do you see, is it within a certain band of like 20% to 60%?
It's kind of mostly all over the place. I think well, most of them aren't anywhere near as high as this, you know, 50%, or at least, put it this way, at least most people don't know that it's potentially as high as that, because there's always something wrong. So, you know, there's always some cost in there, and they're not able to easily pinpoint it. But I think on average, you should probably be looking at around about a 45 to 50% profitability on a customer.
So that's almost like your target. You should be at least getting that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy with a 45% profitability on. I mean, I'd probably, to be fair, probably actually be happy with even 30% profitability on a customer. But you know, 45% and above is pretty good profitability. So this customer, I'd look at this and I'd say, well, you know, 50% profitability overall, you know, on every single contract and everything I'm doing for this customer, 50% profitability is actually pretty good. So
this is really key information, and like probably someone mentioned here, right here in this video, it's something that we do at IT Rockstars. Is one of the first things that we do when we take on new clients is we ask them like who their dream customers are, and they always scratch their heads, and they'll maybe have a few answers for us and who their dream clients are. But I always suggest that, hey, go and look at your existing clients and look at the ones that are the most profitable, and then we basically look for similar businesses locally. And this is a really, right here in this report, we can see that who, you know, from there's almost in nature, it's almost like there's an 80-20 split, where there'll be that 20% that are the ones that are profitable, or very, very profitable. And then there's the 80% that are not so profitable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I see that, you know, I see that kind of stuff all the time. And I always ask customers, you know, what is your ideal customer? What is your ideal profitability? What are you looking to achieve out of this? You know, and then we need to make sure that we're setting up the system in such a way that they're going to get that kind of profitability out of it.
Okay. All right. So when you're given, obviously what we've dived into, this is almost like the real value that you've kind of shown us here, and like why you would use a PSA is to find out this type of information. What other elements can you show us in regards to the value, like what would be delivered? You mentioned things like I didn't realize you have a CRM within this. That's maybe an example, but what other elements do you usually speak to first when you're, first telling someone about PSA and showing them how this can transform their business?
Yeah, so I mean, again, you're right. There is a CRM in there, and you have the ability to run all of your your entire sales pipeline through there. So let's look at let's go into here and start to look at sales. So we can start to say, oh, that's probably not a good one in there. Oh, great, it's all zero for this month. But if we go back to sales history, this is giving you the ability to see, which opportunities or how many opportunities you've closed this month, which ones, you closed last month, so you can do a month-on-month comparison as to, what opportunities you've closed and what the revenue was that you made against those opportunities. So again, the same thing is you can now start to say, well, I know how much money I'm making on these customers. I know which customers I'm winning opportunities on particular things like maybe you're winning on price, or you're winning on relationship, or you're winning on reputation, or whatever it is. This tool is going to give you the ability to see that, and you're going to be able to very quickly see how much money you're making against each one of those opportunity stages, on which are the highest ones you're winning on price, which are the highest ones you're winning on reputation, all of those kinds of things, and what those values are. So it kind of gives you the ability to see that very quickly. So that's one massive benefit of this. And as you can see, this is the same tool, right? I haven't left this tool at all. I've got my finance stuff here. I've got my my sales stuff in here, and then right from the same tool, I've also got all of my service delivery stuff. So now I can start to look at how many tickets are currently open on the system, and then I can start to put in targets of that. So I can say, I've targeted that in this case here, I want there to be 36 tickets in the new status. There should never be more than 36, and I can currently see I'm on 45. So my needle's all the way in the red, right? So again, very, very quick way of being able to say, well, I'm over on the amount of new tickets that that are sitting on the system. So this probably means I'm not giving any great service to my customers, because all these tickets are still new. They haven't even been dealt with yet.
Is there does that page like refresh itself? Can I have that up on my wall somewhere, and it'll just,
you can,
the URL that I can go to have that,
You can. So if you go into presentation mode, so this gives you the ability to kind of present this on a screen,
and that'll update in real time.
It updates in real time, yeah. So the other thing you can see in here is things like, here I've got a first response. So I'm guaranteeing a response time to a customer, but I've got 8 tickets that are overdue, right? Where I've breached that first response. Yeah. So what I can very quickly do again is to click into here and start to see where those tickets are. So if I look at these, once this goes in, I'll be able to see, where are those tickets, how, I don't know why it's so slow at the moment, but where are those tickets coming from? What is why are they breaching? Who breached them? Who was the last person to work on them? All of that kind of stuff. It seems to have slowed down a little bit here. There you go. So now
I was actually thinking it seems quite snappy actually. I mean, apart from that delay, that's one of the things that I kind of, when you first went into the tool, it loads quite fast for a web-based tool.
So to be fair, it does normally load fast. This is a demo account that is in the US, and I'm in the UK. So I'm hitting a server all the way in the US. So I would expect a little bit of slowness.
Do they have an EU data center or UK?
They do, yeah. They have a UK data center. Okay. So yeah, I just so happen to, obviously I don't want to show my real figures on my own real Autotask, so I'm using a demo account. but the other thing you can do, and this is where the real power of using an RMM tool that's built in or that's from the same vendor is the ability to kind of see this really quickly. So looking at this, we got AEM, which is the Autotask endpoint management stuff, or Datto RMM. We can kind of see, how many servers are offline, how many failed backups we've had, any issues where blacklisted apps have been removed, right? So we can now say, hey, here we've got 36 apps on Dropbox that have been removed because we didn't allow those in the organization. We've got 8 of Spotify that have been removed. So it's giving you the ability to kind of see that really quickly and report on that information. So you might want to go to these customers and say, hey, we found all these applications that we don't allow, or they're going to cause some kind of issue. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and removed them and not allowing you to use those. So it gives you the ability to do that. But again, gives you the ability to keep your eye on everything that's going on within within your company. So here you can see again, there we go. So and we can actually see what's happened on these. We can actually see where Dropbox has changed the version. So again, all of these are just tickets that have been created on the system, but by using a little bit of magic on here, we can kind of start to do these kinds of reports. And if this is something that is useful to you as a business, then you may want to know that kind of information. And then the other thing you can start to do is to look at again, like which customers have the top customers with all the open alerts. So again, why are all these customers, do they have these alerts? Are there any trends that we're able to spot? Is it always the same customer that's always having the same kind of problem, right? And again, that's probably going to eventually end up showing that customer is not profitable because we're spending so much time fixing issues of stuff that's happening all the time. And if we're starting to see a trend of what's happening, it's going to allow us to go back in and work better with our customer. So I think, and this is the power of a PSA tool. This is the kind of thing that a PSA tool is going to do. It's doing all of this from the same tool, from the same user interface, not having to switch into multiple different tools, learn different ways of reporting, all that kind of stuff.
Now, that part on PSA tool, this is obviously your insurance Autotask and kind of aligned to them, Chris, but there's other ones on the market. How should someone choose a PSA tool?
So a PSA tool, personally, I think you need to choose a PSA tool that is right for your business. So you need to go and investigate all of them. You're right, this is Autotask. I'm aligned to Autotask, although not affiliated with them, if that makes sense. So I'm an Autotask consultant, but I don't work for them in any way, shape, or form. However, when it comes to choosing a PSA tool, there's no one size fits all, right? There's no solution that just because this is right for me or I'm able to report on this information really quickly doesn't mean it's going to be right for you or it's going to be right for the way that you need to do your business. So I always say to people, you need to investigate every single tool out there. Find out the things that are important to you, what kinds of things you need to look at in your business. If profitability reports are important to you, then there's certain PSA tools that are going to give you much better way of being able to detect the profitability than others. But there might be some that don't do CRM as well or don't do service desk as well, and it's what is right for you as a business owner, and that's the tool you should choose. But unfortunately, the mistake we make in this industry is I think everyone it's very much a me too, right? People will choose a PSA tool because everyone else is doing it, right? Just because everyone else uses Autotask, it's like, okay, well, let's just go and buy Autotask without thinking about actually, is this the right tool?
Okay. Yeah. I'm one of those persons I have a hard time choosing things. I'm indecisive. My wife I drive her nuts with that. I think that's some really good advice. So if you're going down this route then, and you've chosen your tool, doesn't matter what it is, because it's going to be different for everyone. Is there one bit of advice that you would give someone that's choosing, that's implementing a PSA tool? What would it be?
Stick to your implementation. It's vitally important that you get the tool implemented correctly. A lot of people rush into it. that, like I said, they buy it for the wrong reason, right? They want a service desk, so they go and buy a PSA tool, and then all they want to do is get the service desk set up. When I implement a PSA tool with somebody, the service desk is the last thing we do. We look at all the other stuff around that. So we look at, obviously burden rates, we look at contracts, we look at profitability, we look at all these other things, we look at CRM, how to track your sales opportunities, all of those kind of things. And the last thing that we do is the service desk, because whilst they're very strong on service desk, and that is a key part to most people's business, it's not the reason why you should get a PSA tool, and most people will just rush into it and get that installed because all they want to get is tickets, so the customers can log tickets, and then 6 months down the line they have no way of knowing whether those customers are profitable because they haven't spent the time actually setting the system up properly.
So how long should it take to, just the implementation time usually if you're helping someone out with this?
It depends. I mean, normally, for them to dedicate their time and get it up and working, if they were to spend probably around 15 to 20 hours, we could get this tool fully up and working and implemented. But that is, 15 hours of me working with them and them doing their homework and getting the stuff set up. We could probably get this entire tool set up to a point that they could start using it effectively. So it doesn't take awfully long, because at the end of the day, it's only plugging some figures into a tool and getting some stuff set up. Where the biggest thing comes in is them learning the tool and learning how to use it properly, and that can take a lot longer. But the actual setting of the tool up doesn't take very long.
So you mentioned, yeah. So when you're maybe working with a client, you do that whole implementation piece. You've maybe got them to a certain confidence level. You come back in a year or two. What are the types of things that you find that are needing maybe tweaked?
Well, if they're working with me, there should be nothing in a year or two's time because they will have got the right advice on how to do things. But if it's a customer well, at least I hope they will be in that position. But if it's a customer that has gone through an implementation either on their own or from the vendor, then more than likely they're going to come to me in 6 or 8 months' time or a year's time, and want to implement the the billing side of it, or the contract side, or looking at CRM better, or project management side of it, and they just don't know how to use it. So they'll come to me and figure out how to use it. But most people who come to me, the first thing they want to do is profitability, because they know that the system is capable of doing that, and how do they get that profitability information out of it. So those are normally the kinds of clients that are coming to me straight away from that need my kind of help. Is
okay, and that's why you've got a book all about it.
That's exactly why I got a book all about it, because it is the most fundamental thing on a PSA tool. I mean, that's the reason you should be buying a PSA tool, really, is to run your entire business and ultimately find out how profitable your customers are. And that's where people are coming to me saying, okay, well, help me to figure out which clients are profitable or not. So
is there anything that you quite commonly see that's overlooked? I know you mentioned there like the burden cost and things leveling to zero, but is there something that you quite often see many people overlook? Maybe it's a piece of the system that actually there's something really useful in it, but it's just overlooked.
A couple of things. I mean, so obviously burden rate is the most important. Costs of any kind on the system, so cost of services, cost of products, those kind of things are very overlooked. In terms of even things like the CRM, a lot of people don't use the CRM in a PSA tool because they're saying that the CRM is crap, or it doesn't work, or what have you. And most of the time, the reason that somebody's saying that is what they're actually looking for is a marketing tool, right? They're looking for a HubSpot or an active campaign, or one of those sorts of tools. And the CRM in the PSA doesn't do that, right? But there is so much value in what that CRM tool can do. So once they become a lead or a prospect, to run them through the opportunity system and actually track how track those opportunities. Which ones am I winning? How much are those opportunities costing me? And the other thing you can do in these, which a lot of the other tools aren't going to give you the ability to do, is to track your pre-sales activity against those opportunities. And people aren't running opportunities through the PSA tool because they're saying that the CRM isn't as good as what they're expecting a CRM tool to do. But again, it's that whole thing of them looking at it for the wrong reasons.
So you're suggesting then maybe that they're using another marketing tool and they run that as well as running the CRM in here. So once maybe you've got that prospect to a certain stage in the sales, you would take them across into.
Yeah. So and actually, full disclosure. So to be fair, I use a marketing tool myself. I actually use HubSpot.
Okay.
And I track everybody in HubSpot until they get to a certain point. But actually, I track them because I can do things like newsletters, and I can do, drip campaigns and all those kinds of things. So I get them to a certain point in there. But even when they're when I'm starting to do the quoting, or when I'm starting to do the, wanting to know how much time I'm spending against them, I actually put them in as an opportunity into Autotask as well. So then I start to say, okay, all those drip feed campaigns and all those sorts of things I run through HubSpot. But I also at the same time have them in Autotask, so that I can then run a ticket on the pre-sales, and I can say, okay, how much time have I spent doing all of this, all these other marketing activities that I'm doing in the back end. And then I can run a report in Autotask to say, okay, all of these pre-sales activities, this is how much time I spent, and this is how much it cost me to win this opportunity effectively. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't run the opportunity from a very early stage all the way through, through to them becoming a customer. So.
All right, and I do see here, I'm on the Zapier website, and it's obviously that integration site. So there's a Zapier available for Autotask. So that would allow you to integrate it with pretty much any other product on Zapier that there is. So it looks as though it'd be fairly straightforward to kind of put the two together. A good example of that is actually like my Calendly. I was getting so many people booking Calendly requests with me during lockdown, but all of those email addresses, they were not going into my my CRM system. They were just sat in my Outlook. So Zapier to Calendly to, in my case, it's Autotask. But if I was using a PSA, you could probably do Calendly to Autotask as well. But it looks a bit.
You could do, I mean, exactly and that's one of the great things about Zapier, right? Is you could say, hey, so I actually have that integrated with my my website. So if somebody comes in and puts a request on my website, the contact form on the website, I just have Zapier in the back end that adds them to my PSA. So straight away it goes in and says, it's just a WordPress site. So I've integrated it with WordPress. It just goes and finds who they are, fills in, takes all those fields, drops them into the PSA, and creates a lead or a contact. But it actually does the same thing with HubSpot as well. Now I could of course use the HubSpot form on my web page, but in my particular case, I found that the contact forms that come out of WordPress are better than what you get with with HubSpot or any of these.
Is that a plugin that you use in WordPress?
Yeah, so I use a product called I was going to say Cognito Forms, but that's not the I can't even remember what it's called now. Anyway, it's one of the WordPress plugins. I'll tell you what it's called. Hang on, I'll look it up for you now.
There's a website called Built With. You can go in and basically plug in other people's websites, and it tells you everything that they've got installed on your site. See if I can.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
You probably won't find mine because it's hosted.
Monster Insights.
Well, Monster Insights is the one. I'm just trying to see. Hang on. Now, where's it gone?
You've got Yoast, Twimoji.
Gravity Forms. That's what it's called.
Oh yeah, that's quite a powerful one actually. I quite like Gravity Forms.
Crazy. What was that site you just mentioned?
It's called builtwith.com. So you can put any website address in there and it'll tell you the tech stack on the website of their website.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Every day's a school day. There we go.
There's even smarter ones than that. It tells you things like what email provider they're using, crazy stuff, what cookies are running on the background of the site and what the cookies are doing. You've just got Google Analytics. It's handy. So, Chris, is there a, I'm familiar with Connectwise a little bit, and I know that they've got like a marketplace of other apps that kind of integrate with their PSA. Is there something similar with Autotask? Is there like a marketplace? Because we kind of went down this path here of integrations.
There is actually, so Autotask has this thing called the integration center, basically. So so what you kind of get is I can't remember where it is now. I think it's under other tools. So they got this thing here called the integration center. So what this allows you to do is pretty much anyone that's written an application or an integration of any kind with Autotask basically just sits in here, and you can use those integrations. So it's basically the way in which they've built the API to work specifically with the security keys that you need to connect into Autotask. So they're on the approved list of vendors. Now, the marketplace that you were talking about on Connectwise, I think is very different to what this is. This is purely just a list of, companies that have said they integrate with Autotask, that Autotask has kind of, vetted the integration and said, yep, that all looks good and it works well and there's no major issues with it, other than that. Whereas from what I believe, the marketplace in Connectwise allows you to kind of, share all kinds of stuff, reports and all these kinds of things with the community, which Autotask doesn't have at the moment.
They're not there yet. Okay. Yeah. That's the way I've seen a lot of software vendors going. They're kind of opening up their products via their API and things like that. And I guess the benefit for the vendor is that it's almost like these other vendors that will be promoting your product because they have the integration that works with such and such. So I can see someone one day having a WordPress form integration here as well. That's maybe one I can think off the top of my head.
Well, funny you should mention that. I actually built, or not me, but I have had built for me a, which I'm just testing out at the moment, is a plugin that creates a ticket. So what you essentially have is your customers can log an Autotask ticket directly from your website, and it's just a WordPress plugin that allows you to do that. So
I think that'd be really powerful when that's up and running.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it works at the moment, and it works relatively well. I just need to figure out a way to kind of get it out to the market, really. But right now it's just a plugin that you stick on the website. It's just got a literally ticket form, who's the customer, what's their email address, boom, 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 creates a ticket in Autotask, and you're good to go. Yeah.
And that is one of the angles that I've taken. So when I talked about SEO in the past, in the book that I wrote about SEO for managed service providers, one of the things that you can do on your website is that you have, if there's a way for your clients to raise a ticket on your website, or even download the remote support tool, that actually helps your SEO, because you have all of the users having to go to your website, and then Google sees that, oh, there's all of these people coming in, they're typing, it's called like the direct referral. So they're actually typing the website address into Google. And then that actually gives you a boost in the search, because you're getting all of these types of searches that look a lot, they just look good in the eyes of Google. So that totally feeds into it. So yeah, cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've run out of questions now, Chris. I think it's been a really good overview of the system. I can almost see like another video coming up at some point when I've got my head round. Because what I'm planning to do is actually go and look at other systems and have them on the YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to try and find a Connectwise consultant, someone similar to yourself, but is not employed by Connectwise, but has that knowledge that can show me around the system. There's a few PSAs. I think the other one I'm looking at is Altera. They seem to be quite a hot name at the moment in the PSA space. So hoping to get them. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I have, yeah. And the other one that you probably want to look at, which I can probably help you with a little bit, is a product basically called Synchro MSP,
I have heard of them actually, yeah.
which is, I think they're very up and coming in the industry at the moment. They're the kind of tool that a lot more smaller MSPs are adopting, and I really like what I see out of them. I think they're a great tool.
Yeah.
There's certain things that obviously the bigger tools have stuff that they don't, but for a new kid on the block, they're a great tool. And the other one that I really love, which is a UK based company, is Halo PSA.
Okay, that's no one I've heard of.
They're really good. And then of course the other one is Harmony as well, Harmony PSA, which is kind of designed more for the bigger guys. It's more akin to Autotask and Connectwise. But yeah, there's loads of PSA tools out there, and that's why I say, there's so many tools that fit almost every size and shape of MSP, and there's no point picking a tool because everyone else is doing it. And I said this in the book, actually. My mum used to say this when I was a kid, and it's my favorite saying. And she, whenever I wanted to go out and play with my friends, or my friends had a new PlayStation, or they did something, and I always said, Mum, but they did that. And she said, well, if all your friends put their head in the fire, would you? And just because just because everyone else is doing something doesn't mean you should go and do it. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that with all these other tools out there, there's really no reason why you should just settle for something that everyone else has got. You should really do your homework and go and figure out which is the right tool to use for your business, which one makes the most sense, and then go and use that tool.
Some great words of advice there by your mother, Chris.
Yeah, always listen to your mum, right? My mother always used to say, "Mum's always right," and it's true.
It was a similar one. She used to tell me off for hanging out with a certain bunch of kids because she's like, "You get tired with the same brush as them." And it's kind of similar advice. It's like, don't go and do what the hell you're doing. Make up your own mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're all like sheep, and we'll follow what everyone else does because we think it's the right. And
Yeah.
to be fair, it's because there's strength in numbers, right? Because people go, well, it must be the best tool on the market because everyone's using it. And I'm like, well, no, that's because everyone's followed what everyone else is doing. So, go and find a tool that actually works for you, and use a tool that actually is better for you and is going to work for your business and do what you need your business to do. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and that's why I think we touched upon that as well earlier on, is that what I'm doing in marketing at the moment, I'm trying to differentiate from what everyone else is doing. So it's like everyone else is on LinkedIn, they're online, and they're doing all this stuff online. Well, what else is out there? It's almost like the renegade approach. So but great, Chris, to have you on. It's been really useful, this demo that you went over. I now know much more about Autotask and how to become a profitable MSP. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
Yeah. So the best way is directly from the website, which is sondelaconsulting.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at Sondela Consult, or Facebook, or any of the socials, or the book, which is PSAprofitability.com.
Available in all good bookstores.
Yeah, available in all good Amazon bookstores, exactly.